When you indicate that Albrecht would be involved, you mean Albrecht Inc?
Yes, well, we don't have a formalized vision.
Understood,
Albrecht Incorporated
but
is
it's
willing.
Albrecht Inc. is the entity who would be interested in perhaps looking at a co-op.
We used to have a co-op right down the street, and we saw what happened when Albrecht co-opted the co-op.
One crisis at a time. Let's deal with this one.
Right. We would be interested
Speak up.
we would be very interested if a community member or a community group could be formed who was interested in starting and operating and dedicating themselves to a co-op market. We're open to that idea. We think it's a really good idea. So if anybody's interested, we have some very good detailed information here. There's all kinds of web resources out there. We just need some members from the community that are willing to provide the impetus for that formation, for that co-op.
Yeah, I want to backtrack a bit because it seems like, you know, one of the problems here is that we don't have a building big enough to even house a 7-Eleven, let alone any kind of supermarket. So can we look at what the possibility is of expanding that building on the corner into what used to be the community garden / the old Sunoco gas station? Is there any means of getting a building big enough for any kind of store that these people figure out what they want? Because obviously this one's too small right now.
Do you mean the store that's the building that exists
On the corner. I mean, physically, where are you going to put a grocery store in these little buildings, first of all? So I need to know the mechanics of how do we expand this to get a building big enough to put any sort of store
one part
in?
of that. I mean, just to be clear, there is a plan to have another building there, about 6,000 square feet. So that the building that exists there is not the building that's contemplated for a grocery store.
Is that 6,000 square foot building still large enough for even a medium-sized market?
That's definitely an issue and a question, but by way of example, I think the Freshway, for example, down in the valley has about 4,000 square feet. So, I mean, there are grocery stores that operate out of that size, it's slightly smaller. It is not impossible, but it presents unique challenges, certainly, as far as what's offered there, what sort of demand there is, what sort of selection there is, what the prices will be. You know, anytime you deal with a grocery store, you have all these related issues, which goes right back to the point of what will the community support with their money, not just saying we want a grocery store, which is, I mean, we understand that, but what will the community support as far as what is in that store and what will they buy?
Hi, Councilman Mike Williams, and I'm here with Councilman at Large. Where do you go? Okay. And Marco Somerville. One of the things I think is being asked, we can debate all night about what size, this and that, but what would the community support in terms of what produce, what products, what are you looking for in your store? And you can't have, exotic cheeses and cottage cheese on the same. I mean, it's you got to figure out what you want. That's okay. That's
Star
the key.
Market. What was wrong with Star Market?
Yes.
I think that's what they're looking for in terms of, and that's what she'll be looking for in terms of trying to bring in a vendor to
Give us the basics. That's all we want.
All right, let's go ahead, sir. If you have something you want to share it.
Well, I used to work at Star Market. I mean, I've seen a lot of you. I know a lot of you. And like Brian was saying earlier, the older folks would always walk up, and it's too much for them to go down, take a scat. That costs money to go to Akron #1. And what's so hard about your father building a store right here? Why can't he do that? Is he afraid of losing the money down there? I mean, you can have meat shipped down if space is an issue. Why can't your father take care of it? Wasn't it him who promised us a store when he put in all that right there?
Let me take both parts of that question. First, Acme was never intended to be the grocery operator. Acme operates much larger stores than anything ever contemplated for Highland Square. A typical Acme is 65,000 square feet. The kinds of stores we're talking about here are max 12,000 square feet. It's like operating two different businesses, to operate those two different business models. So that was never the plan. and that's not the intention, and there are financial risks involved. And those are things that business leaders, that business owners consider, and they should, and that's one of the things that is a factor here. On the whole, I'm just gonna go with it, on the promise issue, the contractual agreements require Albrecht Incorporated to use their commercially reasonable best efforts to obtain a grocery operator. Now, we have asked everyone that we can, and so far, there has not been any interest. That's why.
That's wrong.
It might be.
That's wrong.
Okay, we'll give you time to speak.
Absolutely.
So there hasn't been any, maybe there's been interest, but none of the negotiations have worked out where any of those grocery operators are willing to invest the capital to open a grocery store. It's a huge financial risk for an individual or a company to take on. So far, those negotiations are not going anywhere. Which brings us to the question of, is it a co-op that we should be looking into?
Why not?
Are there other models we should be looking into? Different sizes, different locations? Would a wine bar with fancy cheese be enough? Would delivery be something that we should be trying to encourage? What is it that would work? So
Bread and butter.
You're asking, yeah, but you know what? You're asking us to take the risk when you will think out of the box and take the risk for Acme. Why can't they think out of the box and give us a grocery store the size and shape that we would like? But you're asking us to take the responsibility as consumers in this area to support it first by making a co-op.
You know, we spent $750,000 on that land that for them to build on. We spent $750,000 on that. And then we told them we'd rent it to them for $10,000 a year. We've already taken the risk monetarily for you.
okay.
Well, we can address that issue. In fact, that's a point that I think should be clarified. The city's definitely spent money on that site, and let's retrace some steps as to why the city spent money on that site. There was a Taco Bell that perhaps that was gonna go there, and the city wanted to help the community not have a Taco Bell there. So they purchased the site, so there was no Taco Bell there. Paid, I'm sure, I've not looked at the financials, but I'm sure they paid a good price for that property to avoid the Taco Bell going there for the benefit of your community. Not necessarily for the benefit of a later ground lease, but so that the Taco Bell would not go there. Let's look at the other piece of properties. I understand that perhaps there was a medical building of some sort there. There was a building there that was being rented, that was actively being used. Again, property values, if you look at property, I am a real estate lawyer, so this is what I do. Look at a piece of land. You have your dirt, you have your building. Any property with dirt and building is gonna have a much higher value than just dirt. So when the city purchased that property, they're paying not only for the dirt, but for the improvement. And so you paid more for the dirt and the improvement. The improvement was later raised, absolutely. But when you talk about the deal, the ground lease that's contemplated, $10,000 for a ground lease, an optional purchase of $250,000. To say that the city is losing money is a little bit of a, you're comparing apples and oranges in some way, because
Well, they can do subtraction, I think we all can.
well, absolutely, but you have to compare what you're comparing. The dirt on that ground, the dirt where the medical building stood, has no different value today than it did when that medical building was there. The building was removed, and that's where the value was adjusted, because the value of the building was adjusted and removed. A ground lease operates so that you're renting the dirt. Okay, so a ground lease operator is renting the dirt. They build their own building, pay for the improvement, and at some point later, either they have the option to purchase, or they just walk away and the building is left there, and the property owner owns the building. There's a few different models of a ground lease, but that's the basic structure. So I guess what I'm saying to you is, your facts, while accurate, also have some background to them that makes it seem, it's just not as clear cut as